In early 2026, the James Webb Space Telescope was tasked with an unprecedented mission. Astronomers pointed its massive gold-plated beryllium mirrors toward a region of the universe known as a supervoid, a colossal expanse of nothingness hundreds of millions of light-years across, completely devoid of galactic clusters. The objective was straightforward: calibrate the near-infrared camera and the mid-infrared instrument against the most pristine, empty background available to human science. According to every textbook, every equation in the lambda cold dark matter model, the prevailing mathematical framework of our universe, this deep field exposure should have returned the ultimate image of absolute nothingness. To truly grasp the magnitude of what happened next, we must understand what empty means in the strict language of quantum mechanics. Even if you remove every atom, every photon, and every stray neutrino from a cubic meter of space, the box is not truly empty. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle dictates that a vacuum is a boiling sea of potential energy. We call this the quantum vacuum. Virtual particle-antiparticle pairs constantly burst into existence, borrow energy from the void, and annihilate each other in an infinitesimal fraction of a nanosecond. This is not just an elegant mathematical theory. We have measured its physical effects in laboratories on Earth, such as the Casimir effect, where two uncharged metallic plates are mysteriously pushed together by the pressure of these phantom particles. However, standard quantum field theory strictly insists that this bubbling vacuum is exclusively microscopic. The energy fluctuations operate on the Planck scale, lengths so unimaginably small that they make a single proton look like an entire galaxy. By the time you zoom out to human scales, let alone the scale of a planetary system or a cosmic supervoid, these localized quantum jitters must mathematically average out to a perfectly smooth, uniform state. The background vacuum energy, what physicists associate with dark energy and the cosmological constant, is supposed to be a smooth, homogeneous fluid that evenly stretches the fabric of spacetime. Thermal noise should be chaotic, randomized, and completely unstructured. That was the unbreakable assumption. Until the 2026 telescope telemetry data reached the servers at the Space Telescope Science Institute, what the raw data revealed was not a uniform hiss of thermal noise. It was not the randomized static of a quiet universe. Embedded within the absolute zero of the supervoid, the sensor arrays detected, organized, macroscopic ripples, a highly structured anomaly where empty space should be. Imagine tuning a radio to a dead frequency, expecting only white noise, and suddenly hearing a rhythmic mathematical sequence. That is exactly what astrophysicists saw in the vacuum of deep space. The deep field thermal map displayed highly ordered, geometric bands of energy stretching across parsecs of supposedly empty space. These were not the microscopic, subatomic jitters predicted by quantum field theory. These were vast, sweeping waves of structural static. Imagine taking a microscope to a drop of clear water, expecting to see random atomic motion, but instead finding the water molecules autonomously arranging themselves into perfectly synchronized pulsing cityscapes. That is the level of physical violation we are witnessing. At first, the scientific community collectively assumed it was an artifact, a ghost in the machine, a calibration error in the massive sunshield, a localized thermal anomaly within the spacecraft itself, or interference from a rogue micrometeoroid impact. For months, independent teams of researchers rigorously analyzed the raw, uncompressed telemetry. They ran exhaustive diagnostic suites, recalibrated the sensor arrays, and cross-referenced the anomalous data with legacy observations from the Hubble, Spitzer, and Planck space observatories. The final conclusion sent shockwaves through the global physics community. The telescope was functioning perfectly. There was no glitch. The anomaly was painfully, undeniably real. We always assumed that if you look deep enough into the void, you find silence. But we did not hear silence. We found a pulse. To understand why this discovery is so terrifyingly profound, we must look at the stakes. The entire foundation of modern astrophysics rests upon the cosmological principle, the fundamental assertion that, on the largest scales, the universe is homogeneous and isotropic. It looks the same in every direction, and its underlying fabric is perfectly smooth. This macroscopic smoothness is what allows us to calculate the expansion rate of the universe, the behavior of dark energy, and the very age of the cosmos itself. The equations of general relativity, Albert Einstein's crowning achievement, describe gravity as the curving of a smooth space-time continuum. The continuum must be continuous. It cannot have inherent massive textures in the absence of mass. If the vacuum of space possesses its own massive, organized topography, if it has structural ripples that defy the uniform thermal noise predicted by our best models, then the equations we use to map the universe are fundamentally incomplete. We are suddenly faced with a reality where the baseline energy of the universe is not a flat, dead line, but a complex, oscillating waveform. The ripples observed in the 2026 data do not behave like baryonic matter, nor do they behave like standard electromagnetic radiation. They are physical fluctuations in the very geometry of space-time itself, occurring at an amplitude and frequency that should be mathematically impossible. They appear as localized phase shifts in the background infrared spectrum, creating distinct bands of slight polarization that stretch for light years. According to the laws of thermodynamics and standard cosmology, these organized structures should have dissipated billions of years ago, smoothed out by the relentless, accelerating expansion of the universe following the Big Bang. Yet, there they are, static, structural, and refusing to fade. This discovery forces us to confront a chilling question. Is our map of the universe missing its most fundamental layer? For decades, human science has treated the vacuum of space as a blank canvas. We have spent billions of dollars and generations of intellectual capital studying the paint, the luminous stars, the devouring black holes, the swirling nebulas, but now, the canvas itself is asserting its presence. It is demanding to be seen. The organized static detected suggests that empty space is not merely a byproduct of the universe's expansion. It might be the underlying architecture that governs it. If the void is not empty, if the macroscopic vacuum possesses an organized quantum structure, then every measurement we have ever made regarding the distance of distant quasars, the lifespan of galaxies, and the ultimate fate of the universe is subject to a massive, underlying variable we did not even know existed. We are staring into the cosmic abyss, and for the first time in human history, the abyss is showing us its blueprint. The cosmic static should not exist, but it does. And as researchers desperately scrambled to explain the geometry of these ripples, they uncovered something even more radical in the follow-up scans. These were not just static waves frozen in the dark. They were actively shifting. The very fabric of reality was jumping. To comprehend the telemetry data from 2026, we must stop thinking of the vacuum as an empty container and start visualizing it as a physical material. When we observe a massive structure, like a suspension bridge, we understand it is composed of steel cables and concrete pillars. We do not expect the air around the bridge to have the same structural integrity. Yet, the data from the deep field implies that the space between galaxies possesses its own underlying architecture. It is not a passive container. It is a rigid lattice. And this lattice is composed of quantum fluctuations that have somehow scaled up to cosmic proportions, establishing a geometry that dictates the behavior of the cosmos. The near-infrared camera aboard the telescope is a marvel of human engineering, capable of detecting thermal variances down to fractions of a Kelvin. It was originally designed to capture the faint, red-shifted light of the primordial galaxies forming just hundreds of millions of years after the Big Bang. But when trained on the absolute darkness of the supervoid, the sensors began registering discrete, energetic anomalies in the baseline vacuum. In the realm of quantum mechanics, these are known as stochastic fluctuations. Normally, a stochastic jump is a microscopic event, a momentary deviation in energy that instantly corrects itself to maintain the equilibrium of the vacuum state. However, the jumps recorded by the Space Telescope were not correcting themselves. They were accumulating. They were locking into a state of macroscopic coherence. Macroscopic quantum coherence is a phenomenon we typically only observe in highly controlled, ultra-cold laboratory environments on Earth, such as within superconductors or Bose-Einstein condensates. In these extreme physical states, millions of individual atoms lose their separate identities and begin acting as a single, unified quantum system. The laws of classical physics completely break down, and quantum mechanics dictates the behavior of the visible, tangible object. What the deep space telemetry suggests is that the vacuum of the universe is acting like a universal superconductor. The virtual particles bursting in and out of existence are not random, they are deeply entangled. They are operating in perfect unison across distances spanning millions of light years. This leads the astrophysical community to a staggering hypothesis. The quantum fluctuations are not anomalies. They are not calibration errors or microscopic aberrations in the lens of our telescopes. They are the structural scaffolding of reality. The universe is not expanding into an empty void. It is expanding into a pre-existing quantum geometry. These organized ripples are the framework that dictates how space-time curves, how gravity propagates, and how matter eventually coalesces from the primordial dust. The void itself is holding the universe together. These are not microscopic errors in the lens. These jumps are the underlying geometry of existence asserting itself. We are not suspended in a quiet, passive emptiness. We are residing inside a hyperstructured, dynamic quantum architecture that is actively maintaining the physical state of the cosmos. The prevailing cosmological model assumes that dark energy is simply a cosmological constant. It is thought to be a smooth, unchanging energy density inherent to space itself, driving the accelerating expansion of the universe. But if the vacuum energy is actually composed of highly ordered, coherent quantum jumps, then dark energy is not a smooth, featureless fluid. It is an active, highly structured grid. The expansion of the universe might not be a continuous, fluid stretching of a rubber sheet. Instead, it might be a systemic expansion of the cosmic lattice, adding new coordinates of space-time in discrete, quantifiable quantum leaps. The universe is not stretching. It is multiplying its fundamental units of space. Consider the profound implications this has for our understanding of gravity. General relativity describes gravity as the smooth warping of the space-time fabric by the presence of mass. But if space-time is fundamentally a quantum lattice characterized by stochastic jumps, then gravity might not be a smooth curve at all. It might be a series of discrete, quantum mechanical steps. As a planet orbits a star, it is not rolling down a smooth, continuous, gravitational well. It is moving across a highly pixelated grid of quantum states, transitioning from one spatial configuration to the next at the Planck scale. This pixelation is exactly what explains the organized ripples detected in the supervoid. The telescope was not looking at matter. It was essentially capturing the pixelation of space-time itself. The datasets analyzed throughout late 2026 provided the definitive mathematical proof of this architecture. The thermal bands discovered in the supervoid were not stationary structures. Advanced spectrographic analysis revealed that massive sections of the vacuum were shifting their energy states simultaneously, without any localized cause or energetic trigger. Millions of cubic parsecs of space would abruptly drop in baseline temperature by a microscopic fraction, while a vastly distant adjacent sector would spike, perfectly conserving the overall energy of the system, but doing so instantaneously across impossible distances. This is a macro-scale manifestation of quantum entanglement, operating on a level that defies classical logic. To see entanglement operating on a galactic scale is conceptually equivalent to watching a planetary orbit instantly shift without any gravitational force acting upon it. The sheer amount of energy required to synchronize the quantum states of a supervoid is beyond human comprehension. Yet, the empirical data remains unambiguous. The vacuum is acting as a synchronized, unified entity. The architecture of deep space is permanently connected by an invisible network of non-local interactions. We are forced to permanently abandon the concept of a passive universe. The cosmic stage is active, and it is dictating the rules of the play. If the vacuum possesses a rigid structure, and if that structure can shift its state instantaneously across vast distances, then the speed of light is no longer the ultimate speed limit of reality. The geometry of the void communicates with itself in real time, bypassing the linear constraints of relativity. And if the very framework of space is subject to instant stochastic jumps, then we must confront the most unsettling consequence of this entire discovery. It is not just the physical structure of space that is fractured and disjointed. It is the progression of time itself. The structure of the universe is one thing, but the way this quantum architecture behaves is what has truly shattered the foundations of classical physics. We are fundamentally conditioned to understand time as an arrow. It flies in one direction, from the past, through the present, and into the future. Thermodynamics dictates this irreversible flow, governed by the relentless increase of entropy. A shattered glass does not reassemble itself. A star that has gone supernova does not collapse back into a pristine sphere of hydrogen. Cause must always precede effect. This linear progression is the bedrock of our reality. But when astrophysicists analyze the temporal sequencing of the macroscopic quantum fluctuations in the supervoid, the arrow of time broke. The Space Telescope did not just capture a static image of these energetic ripples, it captured a time series observation over several weeks. When the data was fed through supercomputers to model the progression of these quantum jumps, the results violated the most sacred rule of causality. The fluctuations were not just shifting in space, they were shifting out of sequence. To visualize this, imagine watching a line of dominoes falling. You see the first hit the second hit the third, a perfect chain of cause and effect. Now imagine watching that same line, but the fifth domino falls before the third one is even struck, and the action of the fifth domino falling is what causes the first one to tip over in the first place. This is known in theoretical physics as non-linear causality, or retrocausality. For decades, it existed merely as a controversial mathematical quirk in the equations of quantum mechanics, a thought experiment confined to the bizarre world of subatomic particles, where time symmetry allows equations to work both forward and backward. No one ever believed it could manifest on a macrocosmic scale. Yet, the 2026 data arrays showed exactly this. Vast sectors of the cosmic lattice were undergoing state changes that appeared to be triggered by energetic events that had not yet occurred in our observable timeline. Deep space anomalies were effectively responding to their own future states. What if cause no longer precedes effect? The new data suggests an event a billion light-years away might just be rewriting its own origin. If a macroscopic quantum fluctuation can shift the baseline energy of a parsec of space, and that shift operates outside of linear time, it means the history of the universe is not a fixed record. The cosmos is not a finished painting slowly fading in the dark. It is a live, dynamic system that is constantly updating its own parameters, and those updates can propagate backward down the timeline. The implications for our understanding of cosmic evolution are paralyzing. When we look at a galaxy formed billions of years ago, we assume we are seeing a direct, untampered historical record. The light took billions of years to reach us, so we are looking into the past. But if the quantum vacuum that this light traveled through is capable of non-linear state changes, then the medium itself is fluid in time. The past we observe might have been fundamentally altered by a quantum fluctuation that occurred millions of years after the light was emitted. We are forced to consider that the universe does not just expand outward in space. It expands, retracts, and edits itself in time. The erratic, jumping reality observed in the new telemetry data paints a picture of a cosmos that is in a constant state of temporal flux. The smooth continuum of space-time envisioned by relativity is replaced by a jittery, discontinuous reality where causality is more of a suggestion than a physical law. Let us delve deeper into the mechanics of this temporal breakdown. In a standard relativistic model, time is a dimension intimately woven with the three dimensions of space. Gravity warps this four-dimensional manifold, which dictates how objects move and how time is experienced relative to an observer. However, the discovery of the macroscopic quantum lattice introduces a variable that relativity cannot account for, which is instantaneous state correlation. In a linear universe, information cannot travel faster than the speed of light. Therefore, an event at one point cannot affect a distant point until enough time has passed for light to traverse the distance between them. The fluctuations recorded by the Space Telescope bypass this light speed limit entirely. The coherent jumps in the vacuum energy state across millions of light-years are not transmitting information through space. They are bypassing the dimensional constraints altogether. This suggests that, at a fundamental, quantum architectural level, the universe is non-local. Distance and duration are merely emergent properties, illusions generated by the macroscopic scaling of a deeper, timeless geometry. When an energetic shift occurs in this lattice, it does not propagate outward like a wave in water. It updates the entire system simultaneously. Because the system is non-local, the update is not bound by the chronological sequencing of the observer. To human instruments operating within the constraints of linear time, this update appears as an effect preceding its cause. We are perceiving a multidimensional quantum update through a strictly linear lens, resulting in a severe distortion of our causal reality. The scientific consensus is fracturing under the weight of this evidence. Traditional cosmologists are attempting to salvage the standard model by proposing elaborate theories involving undiscovered fields or dark matter interactions that might mimic retrocausality without actually violating time symmetry. But the quantum theorists are pushing back, arguing that the data is too clean, the mathematics too precise. The evidence points directly to a universe where the past, present, and future are not a strict sequence of events, but a simultaneous, interconnected web of probabilities, constantly collapsing and reforming. This breakdown of linear sequence means that every model we use to predict the ultimate fate of the universe is built on a flawed premise. We have been trying to calculate the trajectory of an arrow, completely unaware that the target is actively moving the archer. We are not just observers in a universe that is evolving over time. We are participants in a system where the future is actively negotiating with the past to determine the present. As the astronomical community struggles to reconcile this data, a terrifying realization is beginning to take hold. If the universe is capable of non-linear self-correction, then the entire timeline of existence is vulnerable to revision. The collapse of the time axis brings us to the most terrifying paradox that modern science has ever had to face. We have established that the vacuum of deep space is a rigid quantum lattice, and we have observed that this lattice can shift its energy states out of chronological sequence. But when you put these two impossible facts together, you create a monster. You create the causality paradox. If a macroscopic quantum fluctuation can shift and influence its own past state, then what happens to the matter, the gravity, and the light that existed within that altered space? Imagine a distant galaxy that formed 10 billion years ago. We see its light today, captured by our telescopes as a faint, red-shifted smudge against the darkness. We assume this light is an untouchable artifact of cosmic history. But what if a massive vacuum fluctuation occurs tomorrow, altering the foundational geometry of the space that galaxy occupied 5 billion years ago? Does the history of that galaxy change? Does the light currently hitting our orbital mirrors suddenly shift in its spectrum, reflecting a past that was just rewritten? This is not a philosophical thought experiment. It is a direct mathematical consequence of the deep field data. If the universe operates with non-local, retrocausal quantum states, then the timeline of existence is not a secure vault. It is an open, editable document. Physicists are currently wrestling with models of temporal feedback loops to explain how the cosmos survives this paradox without unraveling into complete chaos. In computer science, an error-correcting code continuously scans data and rewrites corrupted bits to maintain the stability of a system. The universe appears to be executing a physical, hyperdimensional version of error correction. When the quantum lattice falls out of energetic alignment, a massive stochastic jump forces a state correction. But because the lattice is fundamentally non-local and operates outside the boundaries of the speed of light, the correction does not just propagate forward. It propagates backward to the origin of the misalignment. The universe changes its own past to ensure its present stability. Astrophysicists are staring at a terrifying possibility. If the universe edits its own timeline, then the cosmic history we are mapping might be nothing more than a temporary draft. Consider what this means for the greatest pillar of modern astronomy, the cosmic microwave background radiation. For over half a century, we have treated this faint microwave hum as the literal echo of the Big Bang. We have measured its microscopic temperature variations to calculate the exact age, composition, and expansion rate of the universe. We confidently declare the cosmos to be 13.8 billion years old. We treat the background radiation as a pristine, untouchable fossil from the dawn of time. But if the underlying vacuum can retroactively alter its baseline energy, then the cosmic microwave background might not be a pristine fossil at all. It might be a cosmic palimpsest, an ancient manuscript that has been erased and written over multiple times by the universe itself. The temperature variations we measure today might not be the pure echoes of the Big Bang. They might be the residual scars of temporal edits, the overlapping marks of a universe that has repeatedly adjusted its own initial conditions to maintain the stability of its quantum architecture. The age of the universe might be a mathematically meaningless concept in a system that constantly rewrites its own beginning. Theoretical physicists at the leading edge of this crisis are scrambling to develop entirely new equations. They are borrowing concepts from the physics of closed, time-like curves, a highly theoretical aspect of general relativity that permits time travel, and applying them directly to the macroscopic quantum fields observed by the Space Telescope. The preliminary mathematics suggest a principle of self-consistency. The universe can and does change its past, but it does so in a way that seamlessly integrates with the present observation. The timeline heals itself instantly, hiding the edit from anyone living inside the flow of time. We only caught the universe in the act of editing itself this time, because the James Webb Space Telescope stared into a supervoid with unprecedented thermal sensitivity and uninterrupted focus. It caught the lattice in the exact middle of a macro-scale transition, a fraction of a second before the timeline could seamlessly heal over the contradiction. We accidentally peered behind the curtain of reality while the stagehands were still changing the set. The tension within the global astrophysical community is absolute. Conferences are being held behind closed doors. Papers are being drafted and immediately retracted as new, even more bizarre interpretations of the telemetry emerge. Everything we know about the origin, the evolution, and the fundamental mechanics of the cosmos is hanging by a thread. We are no longer just mapping a static universe. we are trying to map a living geometry that refuses to be pinned down by the linear march of time. If our past is a shifting illusion, and our present is just a temporary configuration of an underlying quantum grid, then the models we use to predict the future are profoundly broken. The standard cosmological model is dead. It just does not know it yet. To survive this scientific revolution, we must abandon the comforting notion of a smooth, expanding space-time continuum. We must prepare to step into the chaotic, fragmented reality of the flickering universe. The standard cosmological model is a corpse that simply has not realized it is dead yet. For decades, the lambda cold dark matter model has been the undisputed king of astrophysics. It paints a picture of a universe composed mostly of invisible dark matter and dark energy, expanding outward like a smooth, perfectly elastic balloon. But the foundation of this model has been quietly cracking for years, long before the Space Telescope ever stared into the supervoid. It started with a crisis that cosmologists desperately tried to ignore, a massive mathematical contradiction known as the Hubble tension. The Hubble tension is the dirty little secret of modern astronomy. We have two primary ways to measure how fast the universe is expanding. We can look at the early universe by measuring the cosmic microwave background, or we can look at the late universe by measuring the light from distant supernovae. According to the standard model, these two measurements should yield the exact same rate of expansion, but they do not. The early universe tells us space is expanding at one speed, while the late universe tells us it is expanding significantly faster. For years, scientists assumed this was just a measurement error, a slight calibration issue that better telescopes would eventually resolve. But as our instruments grew sharper, the discrepancy only grew worse. The universe was tearing itself apart faster than the laws of physics allowed. Dark energy, the mysterious theoretical fluid proposed to explain this acceleration, was failing to balance the equations. Dark energy was supposed to be a smooth, constant force pushing the galaxies apart. But if it was smooth and constant, the Hubble tension should not exist. The 2026 Deep Field data finally provides the answer to the Hubble tension. But the solution requires us to tear up the textbook entirely. If the vacuum of space is actually a rigid quantum lattice, and if this lattice is capable of macroscopic, out-of-sequence stochastic jumps, then the expansion of the universe is not a continuous process. Space is not stretching like rubber. It is snapping into new configurations. Welcome to the profound and terrifying concept of the flickering universe. To understand the flickering universe, you must abandon the idea that space and time are continuous streams. Instead, imagine a classic celluloid film reel. When you sit in a theater and watch a movie, you perceive smooth, continuous motion on the screen. The actors walk, the cars drive, the rivers flow. But you know that the motion is an illusion. The film is actually a series of static, discrete photographs. The illusion of a smooth reality is created by the projector flashing these frozen frames in rapid succession, with a moment of absolute darkness between every picture. The new data suggests that our universe operates exactly like a cinematic projector. Space-time is not continuous. It is quantized. It exists in discrete, indivisible units. The expansion of the cosmos is not a smooth stretch. It is a strobe light, flashing reality into existence frame by frame. When the universe expands, it does not stretch the existing space. It generates a completely new frame of reality where the distance between galaxies is slightly larger than it was in the previous frame. The stochastic jumps we observed in the supervoid are the physical mechanics of this process. They are the frame transitions. The cosmic lattice shuts down its current energy state and instantaneously snaps into a new, wider geometry. The Planck time, the smallest measurable unit of time in physics, is not just a mathematical boundary, it is the literal frame rate of the cosmos. This is why the Hubble tension exists. We were trying to measure the expansion of the universe using fluid dynamics, assuming space was a continuous medium. But you cannot calculate the speed of a strobe light using the physics of a flowing river. The early universe and the late universe appear to be expanding at different rates because the frame rate of the cosmic projector is not constant. The massive quantum jumps that generate new space are happening erratically, heavily influenced by the nonlinear, retrocausal edits we discovered earlier. The universe is skipping frames, fast-forwarding, and occasionally buffering. If the universe is flickering, it means that movement itself is an illusion. When you walk across a room, you are not smoothly traversing a continuous distance. You are being deleted and rapidly rendered into a sequence of adjacent spatial coordinates, frame by frame, billions of times per second. Your consciousness stitches these discrete quantum states together into the perception of continuous motion, just as your brain stitches together the static frames of a movie. The pushback against this theory from the scientific establishment has been nothing short of a civil war. Throughout the later months of this year, the astrophysics community has fractured into bitterly opposed camps. At the world's leading institutions, traditional cosmologists are fighting desperately to save the old regime. They argue that accepting a discrete, flickering universe destroys the foundational equations of general relativity. Einstein's legacy relies on a smooth, differentiable geometry. If space is pixelated and time is a strobe light, the math of gravity breaks down at the macro scale. The old guard insists that the telescope data must be the result of complex, undiscovered fields of dark matter interacting with light in ways we do not yet understand. They would rather invent invisible, undetectable phantom matter than admit the fabric of reality is jumping. But the radical hypotheses are gaining ground at an unstoppable pace. A new generation of quantum cosmologists is publishing papers that describe dark energy not as a fluid, but as the computational cost of rendering the universe's expanding geometry. They argue that the flickering universe perfectly explains the strange, non-local behavior of quantum entanglement. Particles do not need to send signals faster than light if the space between them is periodically flashing out of existence. In the dark interval between the cosmic frames, everything is instantly connected. We are watching a paradigm shift happen in real time. The debates raging in university halls and digital preprint archives are not just arguments about mathematics. They are existential battles over the nature of reality itself. The evidence is mounting that we do not live in the universe we thought we did. We are not riding a smooth wave of expanding space. We are caught in a hyperdimensional strobe light, and the machine running the projector is entirely beyond our comprehension. The standard model is dead. The flickering universe is taking its place. And as we prepare to face this shattered, non-linear reality, we must ask ourselves what this means for the future of human existence. The revelation of the flickering universe forces a profound philosophical shift in how we perceive our place in the cosmos. For thousands of years, humanity has looked up at the night sky and felt small. We imagined ourselves as insignificant dust motes, floating through an endless, indifferent ocean of smooth space and continuous time. But the deep field data has rewritten that narrative. We are not just drifting through a passive void. We are embedded within an active, hyperdimensional quantum mosaic. Every atom in our bodies, every spark of consciousness in our minds, is being rendered and re-rendered billions of times a second by the cosmic projector. We are intimately, physically connected to the macroscopic lattice of the universe. The void is not empty. It is the very machinery of our existence. The philosophical ramifications extend far beyond just our physical place in the universe. We must confront the nature of memory, history, and destiny. If the cosmos is capable of retrocausal edits, constantly tweaking its past to stabilize its present architecture, we have to ask if human history is also subject to these structural revisions. We perceive our past as a solid, unchangeable foundation. But in a non-linear reality, the past is fluid. The events that shaped our world, the evolutionary leaps that led to consciousness, might be the result of a temporal feedback loop, a future state of the universe ensuring its own optimal creation. The stark dividing line between destiny and random chance blurs into insignificance when the end of a process actively negotiates with its beginning. Accepting this non-linear reality is terrifying, but it also unlocks technological possibilities that previously belonged to the realm of pure science fiction. If the universe communicates with itself instantaneously through out-of-sequence stochastic jumps, then the speed of light is no longer the absolute barrier to human expansion. It is merely a speed limit for the continuous illusion, a rule that applies only to the frames, not the projector. The next era of astrophysics will not just be about observation, it will be about interaction. We will transition from simply watching the quantum lattice to actively learning its underlying code. Consider the future of deep space communication. Currently, if we send a radio signal to a colony on Mars, it takes minutes to arrive. If we send a message to the nearest star system, Alpha Centauri, it takes over 4 years. An interstellar empire could never function under these linear constraints. But if we can engineer a communication device capable of interacting directly with the macroscopic quantum vacuum, we could bypass the speed of light entirely. By artificially inducing a controlled stochastic jump in the local cosmic lattice, we could create an entangled ripple that manifests instantaneously light years away. It would be real-time galactic telecommunications. We would no longer be transmitting signals through the void. We would be plucking the strings of the structural scaffolding itself. Furthermore, the discovery of the macroscopic quantum lattice completely redefines the concept of energy generation. Humanity has spent its entire industrial history extracting energy from the decay of matter, burning carbon, splitting atoms, and capturing the radiation of our local star. But the stochastic jumps detected in the supervoid represent an unimaginable reservoir of kinetic and structural energy. If vast sectors of the vacuum can spontaneously shift their baseline thermal state, they are generating and absorbing power on a galactic scale. If we could develop technology capable of harmonizing with the frame rate of the flickering universe, we could theoretically siphon energy directly from the quantum leaps of space-time itself. We would no longer be parasites feeding on the finite resources of baryonic matter. We would be powered by the heartbeat of the cosmos. The implications for space travel are even more staggering. For a century, our concepts of interstellar travel have been bottlenecked by the sheer energy required to accelerate mass through a continuous physical space. But if space is indeed a mosaic of discrete quantum states, and time is just the flickering sequence of those states, then the entire paradigm of propulsion changes. The next leap for humanity will not be flying through the void. It will be learning how to step between the tiles. Instead of building massive engines to push a starship across the expanding universe, future physicists might develop a way to synchronize a vessel with the dark interval, the microscopic pause between the cosmic frames. We could potentially transition from one set of spatial coordinates to another without ever crossing the physical space in between. We would not travel. We would simply update our position on the grid. This is not mere speculation. The preliminary mathematics for tapping into these macroscopic fluctuations are already being drafted in classified theoretical laboratories around the world. The governments of Earth are beginning to realize that whoever maps the quantum lattice first will control the future of human civilization. The race to understand the cosmic static has quietly become the most important scientific endeavor in our history. We can no longer rely on legacy instruments to chart this new territory. We need a new kind of vision. This brings us to the most critical turning point in modern astronomy. In 2027, an unprecedented coalition of international space agencies will launch a new generation of orbital surveys. These classified missions are not designed to photograph distant galaxies or search for exoplanets. They are equipped with hypersensitive interferometers specifically calibrated to map the geometry of the vacuum. They will trace the exact fault lines of the quantum mosaic. They will measure the precise frame rate of the flickering universe and attempt to predict the nonlinear edits before they occur. The data returned by these surveys will definitively confirm whether our reality is a fluid continuum or a deeply structured quantum simulation. The classical universe, with its smooth space-time and marching arrow of time, is fading into history. In its place, a strange, jittering, retrocausal reality is asserting itself. The void is alive. It is structured, and it is editing the story of the cosmos as we speak. The year 2027 will not be remembered for a manned mission to Mars. It will not be remembered for the discovery of a habitable exoplanet in the habitable zone of a distant star, nor for the launch of another traditional space telescope. When the history of modern astrophysics is written, 2027 will be marked as the year humanity stopped looking at the stars and started scanning the invisible architecture holding them up. It will be remembered as the dawn of Project Kronos. To comprehend the magnitude of this upcoming mission, we must first accept the terrifying reality established by the Space Telescope data in late 2026. As we explored previously, the deep field observations of cosmic supervoids did not reveal a quiet, uniform vacuum. Instead, they uncovered organized, macroscopic ripples of energy. They revealed a universe that is not a smooth, continuous fabric of space and time, but a rigid, discrete, quantum mosaic. We discovered the flickering universe, a reality that updates its spatial geometry frame by frame, utilizing non-local, retrocausal stochastic jumps to maintain its structure. The standard cosmological model collapsed. The void was proven to be alive, highly structured, and entirely capable of editing its own timeline. The immediate aftermath of this discovery was not public celebration. It was classified panic. Within weeks of the finalized data analysis, an unprecedented coalition of international space agencies, theoretical physics institutes, and defense departments convened behind closed doors. The realization was absolute. If the underlying quantum geometry of the universe dictates the behavior of gravity, matter, and time itself, then whoever maps this geometry first holds the key to physics beyond the speed of light. Observation was no longer an academic pursuit. It became a matter of existential security and ultimate technological supremacy. Out of this geopolitical and scientific crucible, Project Kronos was born. Project Kronos is officially designated as the 2027 Orbital Quantum Survey. However, to call it a survey is a fundamental understatement. We are no longer looking for new galaxies in the dark. We are hunting for the literal seams in reality itself. For the past 400 years, since Galileo first pointed a modified spyglass at the moons of Jupiter, astronomy has relied on a single, unchanging principle. We catch light, whether it is visible light, infrared radiation, X-rays, or radio waves. Every telescope ever built by human hands has been designed to capture photons emitted or reflected by baryonic matter. We wait for the universe to send us a signal, and we decode it. But the quantum lattice of the supervoid does not emit light in any traditional sense. It does not glow. It constitutes the very medium through which light travels. Trying to map the cosmic lattice with a standard optical or infrared telescope is like trying to map the atomic structure of a glass window by looking at the trees outside it. Traditional optics are entirely useless for this endeavor. Therefore, the 2027 orbital array requires a complete departure from optical astronomy. The launch vehicles being prepared for the upcoming windows are not carrying mirrors or lenses. They are carrying the most sensitive, highly classified vacuum interferometers ever engineered. To understand what an interferometer does, imagine dropping two stones into a pond simultaneously. As the ripples spread outward and intersect, they create an interference pattern. Where two crests meet, the wave amplifies. Where a crest meets a trough, the wave cancels out. By measuring this interference pattern, you can calculate the exact origin and energy of the stones. A vacuum interferometer works on a similar principle, but instead of water, it measures the interference of perfectly synchronized lasers fired across vast distances in space. We have used interferometers in space before, most notably in the plans for the Laser Interferometer space antenna designed to detect gravitational waves. But the Kronos payload is fundamentally different. Gravitational wave detectors look for the massive, sweeping distortion of space-time caused by colliding black holes. They look for the macro-scale stretching of the continuous fabric. The Kronos interferometers are not looking for the stretch. They're looking for the snap. They are calibrated to measure the microscopic, stochastic jumps of the vacuum energy itself. They are designed to detect the instantaneous phase shifts in the baseline quantum field that occur when the universe skips a frame. The engineering required to achieve this is staggering. The mission involves launching a constellation of highly specialized satellites into a stable Lagrange point millions of miles away from the thermal and gravitational interference of Earth. Once positioned, these satellites will fire continuous, ultra-stabilized laser links between each other, creating an equilateral triangle of measuring beams spanning hundreds of thousands of kilometers. This constellation will effectively function as a single, massive sensory organ. These lasers will establish a perfect, undisturbed baseline of distance. In a smooth, continuous universe, that distance would only change if a gravitational wave passed through, stretching the space between the satellites in a predictable, wave-like pattern. But in the flickering universe, the space between the satellites is composed of discrete quantum tiles. When a macro-scale stochastic jump occurs in the local sector of the cosmos, the lattice will instantly update. The distance between the satellites will shift, not as a smooth wave, but as a rigid, discontinuous jump. The lasers will record a momentary, impossible disruption in their phase alignment. They will capture the exact mathematical fingerprint of reality buffering. This is the vanguard of the new physics. The data retrieved from these measurements will be the final nail in the coffin for classical relativity. If the Kronos array detects these discrete quantum shifts, it will definitively prove that our universe is a high-resolution mosaic. It will give us the exact dimensions of the fundamental pixels of space. It will allow us to calculate the precise energy required for the universe to render a new frame of existence. We are about to measure the architectural blueprints of the cosmos. The launch preparations are currently operating under a veil of extreme secrecy, while the agencies involved release sanitized press statements about mapping dark energy gradients. The true parameters of the mission are locked down. Because mapping the structure is only the beginning. The real terror, and the real power, lies in what happens when you discover how fast the frames are moving, and what hides in the absolute darkness between them. How do you build a machine to measure something that mathematically should not exist, and operates outside the boundaries of linear time? That was the impossible question presented to the engineering teams of Project Kronos. For generations, spacecraft have been built to withstand the physical extremities of the void. We engineered heat shields to survive atmospheric re-entry and radiation plating to protect against solar flares. But for the 2027 orbital surveys, the engineers had to design a payload capable of surviving and measuring the structural collapse of reality itself. The answer lies in the quantum interferometers, the absolute pinnacle of human technological achievement. These are not just sensors. They are synthetic nervous systems designed to feel the heartbeat of the cosmic lattice. To appreciate the sheer insanity of this engineering feat, we must look at the scale of what they are trying to measure. A macroscopic stochastic jump, the moment the universe skips a frame and updates its geometry, happens at the Planck length. That is 10 to the power of minus 35 meters. It is a scale so incomprehensibly small that if an atom were the size of the entire observable universe, the Planck length would be the size of an average tree. To detect a spatial shift of that magnitude, the Kronos interferometers rely on a state of matter known as a Bose-Einstein condensate. Deep within the core of each satellite, isolated behind layers of magnetic shielding and liquid helium coolant, lies a cloud of rubidium atoms. This cloud is chilled to a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. At this temperature, the atoms stop behaving as individual particles and collapse into a single, unified quantum state. They become a superatom, an incredibly fragile quantum entity that is flawlessly synced with the baseline energy of the vacuum. When a laser is fired through this condensate, it acts as the ultimate amplifier. The laser beams traveling between the satellites are not just beams of light. They are entangled extensions of this superatom. They are actively tethered to the quantum vacuum. If the underlying lattice of space shifts by even a fraction of a Planck length, if the universe buffers and renders a new frame, the structural shock wave hits the laser, which instantly registers in the Bose-Einstein condensate. The condensate will visibly ripple, breaking its perfect symmetry for a microsecond. That ripple is the data. That is the exact mathematical footprint of a retrocausal timeline update. These satellites are not designed to capture ancient light. They are engineered to measure the microscopic stutter of space-time itself. But detecting the stutter is only half the battle. The true nightmare of Project Kronos was the problem of data processing. Remember, the quantum fluctuations we are dealing with are non-local. They do not travel at the speed of light. They update instantaneously across the lattice. If a stochastic jump occurs in the supervoid, the interferometers will feel it at the exact same moment it happens millions of light years away. Human computers, which rely on the linear flow of electrons through silicon pathways, are far too slow to process a nonlinear event. By the time a traditional processor registers the anomaly, the timeline will have already healed over it. The data would be lost in the interval. To solve this, Project Kronos had to abandon classical computing entirely. The satellites are equipped with the first fully autonomous orbital quantum processors. These computers do not calculate in binary zeros and ones. They operate using qubits, allowing them to process probabilities simultaneously. They are specifically programmed with predictive error-correcting algorithms designed to anticipate a timeline shift before the physical reality fully resolves. They are calculating the future state of the universe from outside the flow of time. This is the moment everything changes. We are witnessing the precise second when quantum mechanics officially transitions from the realm of abstract theoretical physics into macro engineering. We are no longer just theorizing about the geometry of the void on chalkboards. We are launching physical hardware, built by human hands, directly into the gears of the cosmic machine. The success of these interferometers means that humanity will no longer be blind to the structural mechanics of our existence. When the array powers up and the lasers lock into place across the orbital triangle, Earth will possess a localized tether to the quantum mosaic. We will be the first species, as far as we know, to actively monitor the frame rate of the projector. But the engineers who built these machines harbor a quiet, unspoken fear. They know that when you build an instrument sensitive enough to feel the universe breathing, you have to be prepared for the possibility that the universe might feel you right back. The public documentation claims this is a passive observation mission. But the classified parameters, the deeply hidden directives of Project Kronos, tell a much darker, far more radical story. They are not just going to watch the dark interval, they are going to map it. The public relations campaign for Project Kronos is a masterpiece of misdirection. To the general public, the press releases speak of a standard dark energy survey. They talk of measuring the expansion rate of the cosmos with unprecedented precision. But the unredacted documents, the classified mission parameters buried deep within military-grade servers, tell a fundamentally different story. The true objective of the 2027 orbital array is not to look at the stars, the galaxies, or the expanding void. The primary objective is to measure the absolute darkness between the frames of our existence. To grasp this classified objective, we must return to the concept of the flickering universe. As we established, space and time are not continuous. The universe is not a flowing river. It is a cinematic projector. It renders physical reality in discrete, indivisible, quantum frames. The expansion of the cosmos is achieved by shutting down the current spatial geometry and instantly rendering a new, slightly larger configuration. But this mechanical process demands a terrifying question. When the projector advances to the next frame, what happens in the space between? Theoretical physicists refer to this gap as the dark interval. It is the microscopic pause, the infinitesimally small fraction of a second, where the universe is effectively turned off. In classical physics, this concept is absurd. Reality is supposed to be a permanent fixture. But in a quantum mosaic, the dark interval is a mathematical necessity. You cannot transition from one discrete state to another without crossing a boundary of non-existence. Just as a film projector requires a shutter to block the light while the film advances, preventing the image from blurring into a chaotic smear, the universe requires a shutter to maintain the rigid geometry of its quantum lattice. The classified goal of Project Kronos is to calculate the exact duration of this cosmic shutter. They are hunting for the universal frame rate. Physicists have long suspected that the smallest possible measurement of time, known as the Planck time, which is roughly 10 to the power of minus 43 seconds, is not just an arbitrary limit of our mathematics. It is the literal tick rate of the cosmic clock. It is the duration of a single frame of reality. The Kronos interferometers are designed to look for the gaps between these ticks. When the laser links fire across the orbital triangle, the autonomous quantum processors will analyze the phase alignment of the beams. They are not looking for the continuous presence of the laser. They are looking for the microscopic absences. They are searching for the mathematical signature of the moment. The laser, the satellites, and the entire observable universe momentarily cease to exist before being rendered again. They are trying to catch reality buffering. The implications of mapping the dark interval are profoundly disturbing. It strips away the illusion of our continuous existence. If the universe flickers at the Planck rate, it means that you, your memories, and the device you are using right now are being deleted and reconstructed trillions of times every single second. Our consciousness is nothing more than the persistence of vision. We are biological software running on a quantum computer that constantly reboots itself. But the classified documents reveal an even deeper anxiety among the mission architects. What if the dark interval is not just empty? In quantum field theory, absolute nothingness is highly unstable. If the universe turns off for a fraction of a Planck time, that interval is unbound by the laws of physics. It is outside of space, outside of time, and outside of causality. Some theoretical models suggest that during the dark interval, the fundamental forces of nature dissolve, and the universe enters a state of pure, unbound probability. This is where the non-local, retrocausal edits occur. The universe uses the dark interval as a sandbox, a split-second window outside of linear time where it can recalculate its own geometry, shift the underlying quantum lattice, and correct any structural errors before rendering the next frame. The dark interval is the backstage of reality. It is the hidden dimension where the cosmic architecture is maintained. By calibrating the Kronos array to map this interval, humanity is attempting to peek backstage. The satellites are programmed to analyze the energetic residue left behind when the universe snaps back into existence. Every time the lattice updates, it must leave a microscopic thermal footprint, a shadow of the computational energy expended during the dark interval. By capturing these footprints, the mission planners hope to decode the operating system of the cosmos. They want to know the rules governing the dark interval. Why does the universe choose one geometric configuration over another when it renders the next frame? Is it a blind, stochastic process, or is there an underlying mathematical logic driving the evolution of the mosaic? If there is a logic, a set of algorithms dictating how the timeline edits itself in the dark, then reality is not just a structure, it is a calculated process. Mapping the dark interval is the ultimate act of scientific hubris. We are building machines to measure the moments when we do not exist. We are trying to shine a light on the fundamental blind spot of the cosmos. But observation at this level is never truly passive. In quantum mechanics, the act of measuring a system fundamentally alters its state. The architects of Project Kronos know this, and it leads to the most dangerous phase of the mission. If we observe the dark interval, if we capture the buffering of reality, we might inadvertently trigger the very retrocausal edits we are trying to map. If the universe continuously rewrites its past to stabilize its present architecture, the ultimate question arises: can we see the edit before it happens? This question forms the core of the most classified objective of Project Kronos. To understand the gravity of this objective, we must examine the physics of temporal feedback loops. In classical mechanics, a feedback loop is a simple mechanism where the output of a system is routed back as input, either amplifying or dampening the system's behavior. In a quantum mosaic operating outside of linear time, a temporal feedback loop is a mechanism of survival. It is the universe correcting a fatal structural error. When the quantum lattice of space-time becomes energetically unstable, it threatens the cohesion of the entire cosmic framework. To prevent a localized collapse of physical laws, the universe initiates a macro-scale stochastic jump. It snaps into a new, stable geometric configuration. But because the lattice is non-local, the correction does not simply apply to the present moment. The universe reaches back down the timeline and adjusts the initial conditions that led to the instability in the first place. It edits the past to ensure the present remains viable. The chilling reality is that human history, the evolution of our solar system, and the formation of our galaxy have likely been subjected to these retrocausal edits countless times. We do not notice them because we are strictly products of the timeline. When the past is rewritten, our physical records, our geological strata, our memories, and our very consciousness are rewritten along with it. We always remember the universe exactly as it has just been edited to be. The seamless nature of the cosmos is maintained by erasing the evidence of its own repairs. However, the physicists and engineers behind Project Kronos recognized a theoretical loophole in this cosmic defense mechanism. A retrocausal timeline shift is an event of unimaginable energetic magnitude. Even though the edit propagates backward through time, the physical initiation of the state correction, the trigger event, must occur in the present. It requires a localized buildup of extreme quantum tension before the lattice actually snaps. There must be a preliminary energetic signature, a microscopic but measurable breakdown of causality in the surrounding vacuum, just milliseconds before the timeline forcefully heals itself. The quantum interferometers aboard the 2027 orbital array are specifically calibrated to detect this exact signature. They are constantly scanning the supervoid for the mathematical precursors of a temporal feedback loop. They are looking for the momentary drop in local entropy, the sudden, impossible violation of thermodynamic laws where energy begins to flow backward in a localized pocket of space, signaling that a retroactive state correction is imminent. These sensors might just give humanity its first ever warning of an incoming, retroactive timeline shift. Imagine the scenario currently running in the simulation servers of the defense departments. The orbital array is locked onto a sector of deep space. Suddenly, the autonomous quantum processors register an impossible variance in the Bose-Einstein condensates. The algorithms calculate that a massive sector of the cosmic lattice is experiencing critical structural tension. The prediction model outputs a near certainty. Within 72 hours, that sector of space will initiate a retrocausal jump. It will edit the timeline of that cosmic region, reaching back billions of years to stabilize its geometry. What happens when the shockwave of that localized edit reaches the parameters of Earth? If the targeted sector of space happens to intersect with the historical trajectory of our local galactic group, the retrocausal shift could alter the fundamental constants of our own past. The satellite array would transmit a warning to the ground stations, confirming that a timeline edit is incoming and inescapable. But this introduces the most profound paradox in the history of science. If the array detects an incoming timeline shift, and the ground teams receive the warning, humanity suddenly possesses knowledge of an event that is mathematically designed to erase the memory of its own occurrence. Once the timeline is edited, the conditions that triggered the warning might no longer exist. The physicists staring at the telemetry data in the control room would suddenly find themselves looking at a different screen, remembering a different sequence of events, completely unaware that reality had just fractured and reset. The data predicting the edit would vanish, replaced seamlessly by whatever data aligns with the newly stabilized timeline. Project Kronos is not just trying to map the structure of the universe, it is attempting to trap the universe in a paradox. By recording the preliminary signatures of a retrocausal event on an isolated, quantum-encrypted orbital processor operating independently of the terrestrial timeline, the mission planners hope to create an immutable record. They are trying to build an artificial memory bank that can survive a timeline edit intact. If they succeed, if the satellite retains the warning data after the timeline has reset, humanity will possess the first piece of information that does not belong to the current iteration of reality. We will hold a mathematical fossil from a deleted timeline. The sheer danger of this objective cannot be overstated. We are attempting to outsmart the error-correcting code of reality itself. If the cosmic projector detects a foreign system actively recording its temporal edits, we do not know how the quantum lattice will respond. Will it ignore our microscopic sensors? Or will the universe perceive our observation as a structural anomaly that requires an even more aggressive retrocausal correction? By watching the timeline shift, we might accidentally become the instability that needs to be deleted. We are poking a sleeping giant, completely unaware of what it will do if it realizes it is being observed. Yet, the governments and agencies backing this mission have deemed the risk acceptable, because the alternative is remaining blind passengers on a cosmic train that is constantly rebuilding its own tracks. Passive observation is no longer enough. The military and scientific complexes driving this initiative have realized that understanding the edit is merely the prologue. The secondary payload of the 2027 survey is designed for something far more aggressive than just watching. They do not just want to watch the timeline change. They want to learn how to induce the jump themselves. Observation is merely the prologue to the true ambition of Project Kronos. For the past century, astrophysics has been a strictly passive discipline. We build larger mirrors, more sensitive antennas, and more complex orbital observatories, all for the singular purpose of catching the data the universe decides to throw at us. We are the ultimate bystanders. But the secondary payload loaded onto the 2027 orbital array represents a fundamental shift in the relationship between humanity and the cosmos. The scientists and military strategists behind this classified initiative do not just want to watch the timeline change. They want to learn how to induce the jump themselves. They want to interact with the quantum lattice. This ambition is housed within the active ping generators of the satellites. Alongside the hypersensitive Bose-Einstein condensates designed to measure the dark interval, The array carries experimental high-density electromagnetic pulse emitters. In traditional space exploration, an electromagnetic pulse is a destructive weapon or an unfortunate side effect of a solar flare. But, in the context of the flickering universe, a precisely calibrated pulse is a tool. It is a hammer designed to strike the very foundation of space-time. The theoretical physics behind this experiment is both elegant and terrifying. If the vacuum of space is a rigid, discrete quantum mosaic, and if macroscopic stochastic jumps are triggered by localized energetic instability, then it stands to reason that an artificial injection of extreme energy could force a localized frame update. By firing perfectly synchronized, high-frequency electromagnetic bursts directly into the supervoid, the array will attempt to artificially generate the exact energetic signature required to destabilize a single quantum tile of the cosmic lattice. They are attempting to forcefully ping the universe. They want to trigger an artificial stochastic jump. If the experiment is successful, the implications will instantly render every current mode of human technology obsolete. When a stochastic jump occurs, whether naturally or artificially, the structural shock wave does not travel through space like a radio wave. Because the cosmic lattice is a non-local quantum system, the state change updates simultaneously across vast distances. If the array can induce a localized jump in the vacuum, they are essentially creating an entangled ripple. They are forcing the universe to update its geometry, and that update can mathematically manifest light years away at the exact same instant. By the end of this decade, we might not be transmitting radio signals through the void. We might be directly plucking the strings of the cosmic web. Consider the sheer logistical nightmare of interstellar communication as we currently understand it. If humanity were to establish a colony on Proxima Centauri, our closest neighboring star system, a simple message sent via traditional radio telemetry would take over 4 years to arrive. A conversation would be impossible. The speed of light is a suffocating bottleneck for any civilization attempting to expand beyond its local star. But if we master the technology of the active ping, that bottleneck shatters. By encoding data into the energetic parameters of an artificial stochastic jump, we could instantly alter the state of the quantum lattice at a predetermined destination. A receiver array in another star system, equipped with its own vacuum interferometers, would detect the momentary phase shift in the dark interval and decode the data. This is not faster-than-light communication. It is non-local communication. The message does not travel the distance. It bypasses the distance entirely by utilizing the backstage mechanics of the flickering universe. We would achieve real-time, zero-latency communication across the galaxy, but communication is only the first application of this technology. If we can control the stochastic jumps of the vacuum, we begin to manipulate the fundamental variables of physical reality. The energetic cost of rendering the universe's geometry is astronomical. If we can harmonize our technology with the frequency of the dark interval, we could theoretically tap into the baseline energy of the vacuum itself. The power required to stabilize a quantum tile could be siphoned during the fraction of a Planck time when the universe is buffering. We would move from an energy-scarce civilization burning dead matter to a civilization powered by the heartbeat of space-time. However, the physicists designing these active ping emitters are acutely aware of the existential danger they are inviting. The universe uses stochastic jumps to correct fatal structural errors. It edits the timeline to ensure its own survival. If human engineers start artificially triggering these jumps, we are essentially injecting false errors into the cosmic operating system. We are hacking the timeline. We have no idea what the threshold is before the universe perceives our artificial pings as a critical threat. If we ping the lattice too hard, or with the wrong harmonic frequency, the resulting temporal feedback loop might not just edit a distant sector of space, it might initiate a localized state correction that targets the source of the anomaly. The universe could simply delete the orbital array, and the Earth along with it, retroactively removing our entire solar system from the timeline to preserve the integrity of the mosaic. The military commanders overseeing the classified payload consider this a necessary risk. In the geopolitical calculus of the 21st century, the nation that masters the quantum lattice controls reality. The race is no longer about putting satellites in orbit. It is about seizing the projector. The active ping experiments of 2027 are the first steps toward absolute mastery of physics, or the complete erasure of the human species. There is no middle ground. Observation was the science of the past. Interaction is the science of the future. And as the launch windows approach, humanity is preparing to knock on the door of the cosmos, completely unprepared for what might answer. The launch window for Project Kronos is rapidly closing in on us. As we stand in the later half of this decade, the classical model of the universe is officially living on borrowed time. Deep inside secure aerospace facilities, the payload fairings are being meticulously sealed over the quantum interferometers. The orbital launch vehicles are being fueled. To a casual observer, the physical preparations look exactly like any other satellite launch of the past 50 years, but the payload they carry represents the absolute termination of human ignorance. We are not just putting another piece of metal into orbit. We are launching a mirror that will force the universe to look at its own underlying structure. We must prepare ourselves for the profound psychological and philosophical impact of the data that is about to return to Earth. For centuries, human civilization, scientific inquiry, and our very sanity have been anchored by the comforting illusion of causality. We built our societies, our laws, and our fundamental understanding of existence on the unbreakable rule that the past is a solid, unchangeable foundation, the present is a fleeting but tangible moment, and the future is an unwritten canvas. The space-time continuum provided a safe, deterministic reality. But the flickering universe shatters that comfort permanently. If the 2027 orbital array confirms the discrete, nonlinear nature of reality, the psychological shockwave will alter human civilization more violently than the discovery that the Earth orbits the Sun. How do we live in a reality where history is fluid? How do we build a civilization when the foundational geometry of the space we occupy is subject to retrocausal state corrections? We will be forced to accept that our memories, our geological strata, and our historical records are merely the latest draft of a cosmic manuscript that is constantly being revised in the dark interval. The stark, terrifying truth is that we are not individual actors moving across a static, empty stage. We are localized clusters of data, temporarily coherent patterns of energy embedded within a dynamic, hyperdimensional quantum structure that prioritizes its own mathematical stability over our localized perception of linear time. Our understanding of consciousness itself will have to be completely rewritten. If the universe flickers at the Planck rate, shutting down and rendering a new spatial geometry trillions of times per second, then our continuous stream of thought is an evolutionary illusion. We are being deleted and reconstructed frame by frame. The electrical impulses in our brains, the neurons firing to process these very words, are operating within a system that fundamentally stutters. Humanity is nothing more than biological software running on a quantum architecture that is actively buffering. Recognizing this fact strips away our ego, but it replaces it with a terrifying sense of integration. We are not separated from the void. We are the void, experiencing itself through the lattice. Yet, within this existential terror lies the greatest evolutionary leap in the history of our species. We are evolving from passive observers into active participants. For 13.8 billion years, the cosmic projector has been running on autopilot, executing its stochastic jumps and timeline edits without any conscious intervention from the matter it renders. But the moment the active ping emitters of the Kronos array fire their first calibrated electromagnetic pulse into the supervoid, that isolation ends permanently. Humanity will be reaching into the dark interval and knocking on the underlying architecture. We will be announcing our presence not to the distant stars, but to the operating system itself. When the first data packets return from the orbital interferometers in late 2027, the history of physics, and indeed the history of human thought, will be violently and neatly divided into two distinct eras. There will be the long, naive era of the continuum illusion, governed by the classical mechanics of Newton and the smooth relativistic curves of Einstein. And there will be the era of the quantum mosaic. In this new era, the speed of light will no longer be an inescapable cage keeping us confined to our local solar system. The linear progression of time will no longer be an absolute tyrant marching us toward entropy. We will begin to map the coordinates of the dark interval. We will learn the complex mathematical language of the stochastic jumps, and eventually, generations from now, we might transition from merely reading the code of the universe to actively writing our own geometry into the fabric of space-time. We will move from being subjects of the timeline to architects of the mosaic. The transition, however, will not be smooth. The academic civil wars currently raging across university campuses and classified defense laboratories will inevitably spill over into the public consciousness. The revelation that our universe is a discrete, flickering, error-correcting mechanism will challenge every philosophical framework and theological doctrine on Earth. People will demand the comfort of the smooth, continuous void. But the truth of the cosmos does not require our comfort, nor does it ask for our permission to operate. The cosmic static is undeniably real. The quantum lattice is waiting in the absolute cold of deep space. The countdown to the launch of Project Kronos has already begun, and the classical universe is drawing its final, continuous breath. We are standing on the precipice of a non-local reality, preparing to step between the frames of our own existence. We were told the 2027 orbital surveys were designed to observe the universe. We were assured by international space agencies that Project Kronos was simply the next logical step in passive astronomy, a mission to map the gradients of dark energy and measure the expansion rate of the cosmos with unprecedented precision. That was a lie. The recently leaked engineering schematics reveal an architecture not meant for observation, but for interrogation. For months, the global astrophysics community has been operating under the assumption that the payload fairings currently being sealed in classified aerospace facilities contained highly sensitive, but ultimately harmless, measurement devices. We believed we were launching the ultimate thermometer to check the temperature of the void. But a massive data breach, originating from a joint military contractor server, has shattered that comforting narrative. The unredacted blueprints, hundreds of pages of dense quantum mechanical schematics and orbital deployment protocols, tell a terrifying story. The hardware being loaded onto the launch vehicles is not a telescope, it is a trap. To understand the true nature of this weaponized architecture, we must deeply analyze the core components of the quantum interferometers. The public documentation stated that these satellites would use Bose-Einstein condensates as passive sensors. A Bose-Einstein condensate is a bizarre state of matter created by cooling a cloud of rubidium atoms to a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. At this extreme thermodynamic limit, the atoms lose their individual physical identities and collapse into a single unified quantum state. They become a superatom, incredibly fragile and exquisitely sensitive to microscopic shifts in the baseline energy of the vacuum. The official story provided to the press was that these condensates would simply float in the magnetic core of the satellites, gently rippling whenever the universe skipped a frame, allowing us to passively record the dark interval between spatial updates. But the leaked schematics show an entirely different wiring diagram. The condensates are not isolated in passive suspension. They are integrated into a high-voltage, closed-loop feedback system connected directly to the primary power core of the satellite array. We assumed these machines were built to listen to the cosmic static. The leaked schematics prove they were designed to force the static to answer. The engineering documents describe a highly classified process called active quantum tethering. Instead of just letting the Bose-Einstein condensate react to the natural, stochastic fluctuations of the cosmic lattice, the Kronos array is designed to lock the condensate into a forced, artificial resonance with the vacuum. By precisely modulating the magnetic confinement fields around the rubidium cloud at specific frequencies, the engineers have created a mechanism that can theoretically grip the underlying non-local geometry of spacetime. Imagine dropping a fishing line into an incredibly deep, completely dark ocean. A passive sensor simply waits to feel a tug on the line to know that something massive is moving in the unseen depths. Active tethering is not just feeling the tug. It is hooking the line directly into the tectonic plates at the bottom of the ocean and preparing to pull. The sheer arrogance of this design explains the unprecedented level of geopolitical secrecy surrounding the final assembly of the payload. Traditional astronomical missions, even those heavily funded by defense departments, maintain a certain level of academic transparency. Scientists regularly publish peer-reviewed papers on the sensor calibration and the orbital mechanics of the craft. But the active tethering modules of Project Kronos were developed in complete blackout conditions. The theoretical physicists recruited for this specific component were pulled from highly classified weapons research programs, not observational astronomy departments. The blueprints bear the classification stamps of intelligence agencies that deal in global existential threats, not planetary science. The major governments of Earth have realized that the cosmic lattice is not just an abstract mathematical concept discussed in university halls. It is the ultimate strategic high ground. If you can lock on to the baseline energy of the universe, you hold the structural integrity of physical reality in your hands. Look closely at the structural bracing detailed in the leaked computer-aided design files. The satellites are massively over-engineered. They feature heavy inertial dampeners and structural integrity fields that are entirely unnecessary for a vehicle operating in the frictionless vacuum of a stable Lagrange point. Why would a passive observation satellite need heavy armor and localized recoil suppression? Because the engineers know that when you tether a physical machine to the non-local quantum architecture of the universe, you are subjecting that machine to unimaginable dimensional stress. When the lattice shifts, it does not move gently. A macroscopic stochastic jump is a violent, instantaneous recalculation of geometry. The satellite is built to absorb the kinetic shockwave of a localized reality update without shattering into microscopic shrapnel. This marks a terrifying paradigm shift in the history of our species. For 13.8 billion years, the matter in this universe has been a slave to the geometry of space-time. Galaxies form where the lattice dictates. Light bends where the vacuum curves. Biological life evolves in the quiet, isolated corners where the cosmic frame rate remains stable. Humanity has spent its entire history as a passive observer, looking up at the night sky and trying to guess the rules of a game we could not touch. But the hardware sitting on those launch pads changes the rules forever. We are no longer content with being mere astronomers. We are transitioning into active disruptors of the cosmic lattice. We are building machines designed to grab the fabric of existence by the throat. The active tethering is just the anchoring mechanism. It is the grip. But a grip is useless unless you intend to apply force. And that is exactly what the secondary modules on the leaked blueprints are designed to do. Once the Bose-Einstein condensates lock onto the vacuum, the true nightmare begins. The satellites are equipped with hardware that makes the active tether look like child's play. They are carrying devices built to strike the tether, to send a massive shockwave down the line and force a localized collapse of causality itself. How do you build a device capable of striking the fundamental geometry of space-time? We are not talking about splitting an atom or detonating a thermonuclear warhead. Those are manipulations of baryonic matter, violent but ultimately confined within the existing predictable rules of classical physics. What the Kronos orbital array is designed to do is fundamentally different. It is designed to shatter the rules themselves. The leaked blueprints dedicate over 400 pages to a subsystem known as the active ping emitters. These are not observation tools. They are the hammers meant to strike the anvil of reality. To understand how an active ping works, we must look at the mechanics of a natural stochastic jump. When the universe skips a frame and updates its spatial geometry, it does so to relieve extreme localized quantum tension. The universe is maintaining a delicate mathematical equilibrium. The active ping emitters are built to artificially simulate that exact tension, forcing the system to react. They consist of a phased array of hyperfrequency electromagnetic projectors, arranged in a perfectly symmetrical lattice around the central Bose-Einstein condensate. These projectors do not fire traditional lasers, microwave beams, or standard radio waves. They generate synchronized bursts of high-density electromagnetic radiation tuned precisely to the resonant frequency of the dark interval. The precision required for this operation borders on the impossible, pushing the limits of human manufacturing. Space-time is quantized at the Planck scale, meaning the structural tiles of the universe are roughly 10 to the minus 35 meters across. To put that into perspective, if the entire observable universe were scaled down to the size of a single atom, the Planck length would be roughly the size of a standard living room. If the orbital emitters are misaligned by a fraction of a nanometer, or if the firing sequence is delayed by a single attosecond, the pulse will simply dissipate into standard thermal radiation. It would be harmlessly absorbed by the surrounding void. But if the arrays fire in perfect, unbroken synchronization, the overlapping electromagnetic waves will compress into a microscopic focal point. This creates a localized energy density so extreme that it momentarily exceeds the threshold of the quantum vacuum. Generating this catastrophic level of energy density requires a power source that eclipses any traditional satellite architecture ever put into orbit. The blueprints reveal that the Kronos array does not rely on standard unfolding solar panels or conventional radioisotope thermoelectric generators. Those would not provide a fraction of the necessary yield. Instead, each satellite in the constellation is equipped with a miniaturized, closed-cycle fusion reactor. These reactors utilize magnetically confined plasma to generate raw, unadulterated power, essentially capturing the sustained detonation of a small star within a titanium chassis. But even a fusion reactor is not enough to sustain the active ping. The energy cannot be fed continuously. It must be stored, compressed, and released in a fraction of a picosecond to create the necessary shockwave. This is achieved through a series of superconducting capacitor banks that wrap around the inner hull of the satellite like the coils of a massive electromagnet. The schematics show these banks submerged in liquid helium to maintain absolute zero resistance. When the firing sequence is initiated, the reactor dumps its entire thermal and electrical load into the capacitor banks. The capacitors hold this apocalyptic charge for a microsecond, straining against their magnetic containment fields before channeling the raw power into the phased array projectors. The resulting electromagnetic pulse does not travel outward into the blackness of space. It is fired inward. The pulse is directed precisely into the tethered Bose-Einstein condensate, hovering at the core of the ship. The condensate, already locked into a forced resonance with the baseline energy of the void, acts as the ultimate conduit. It transfers the kinetic and electromagnetic shockwave of the pulse directly into the structural scaffolding of the vacuum. It is a brute force injection of energy into a system that relies on absolute mathematical balance. Creating a microscopic quantum fluctuation in a highly controlled laboratory on Earth is one thing. We have done that for decades to study subatomic particles in isolation. But engineering an orbital emitter that forces the universe to recalculate its own geometry across a macroscopic sector of deep space is an act of cosmological aggression. We are not just poking the void. We are attempting to tear a microscopic hole in it and force the universe to stitch it back together according to our artificial parameters. The blueprints show that the active ping is designed to force a localized spatial update. If the pulse successfully destabilizes the quantum lattice, the universe will immediately trigger a macro-scale stochastic jump to correct the error. It will skip a frame. But because human engineering artificially induced the jump, the resulting geometric configuration will bear the mathematical fingerprint of the Kronos array. We will have essentially written a line of human code into the operating system of the cosmos. The military strategists who commissioned this hardware understand exactly what they are building. An orbital array capable of editing the quantum lattice is the ultimate, unrivaled weapon. It renders nuclear arsenals, orbital defense platforms, and hypersonic missiles completely obsolete. Why threaten to vaporize a military installation or a sprawling metropolis with a ballistic missile when you can simply force the universe to recalculate the space that city occupies? By inducing a targeted stochastic jump, you could effectively erase an entire geographic region from the current frame of reality, leaving no radiation, no fallout, and no trace that it ever existed. The active ping emitters are the foundational, terrifying technology for non-local retrocausal warfare. But the theoretical physicists who designed the emitters are terrified of their own creation. The mathematics governing the active ping are largely theoretical, based purely on simulations run by autonomous quantum processors, isolated deep underground. No one actually knows how the universe will react to a forced macroscopic update. The lattice is a hyperdimensional structure that has maintained its own equilibrium for over 13 billion years without interference. By firing a high-density pulse into the dark interval, we are introducing a catastrophic logical error into a self-correcting system. We are attempting to dictate terms to the architecture of existence. We are forcing the universe into a corner, and as the next section of the leaked blueprints reveals, the engineers knew the danger. They had to design an even more complex, mind-bending machine to survive the consequences of their own pulse. Firing a high-density electromagnetic pulse into the rigid geometry of the quantum vacuum is incredibly dangerous. But the physical destruction of a localized sector of space is not the true terror of Project Kronos. The true terror lies in the mathematical trap. These active ping emitters are explicitly designed to spring. The leaked blueprints dedicate a highly classified annex to a subsystem referred to simply as the paradox engine. It is here that the mission transitions from an act of extreme engineering into a deliberate assault on the logic of reality itself. To grasp the function of the paradox engine, we must revisit the mechanics of a retrocausal timeline edit. As established by the deep field telemetry, the universe prioritizes geometric stability above all else. When a massive structural anomaly threatens the quantum lattice, the cosmos does not simply fix it in the present. It initiates a non-local stochastic jump, reaching backward through time to alter the initial conditions that caused the anomaly. It edits the past to ensure the anomaly never occurred in the first place. Therefore, if the orbital emitters successfully fire and fracture the vacuum, the universe's immediate immune response will be to erase the ping from history. It will rewrite the timeline so that the satellites never fired or perhaps were never even built. This is the fundamental problem of interacting with a retrocausal system. How do you measure an event if the universe's response to that event is to delete the event from existence? The engineers behind Project Kronos recognized this insurmountable hurdle. If the timeline resets, the data goes with it. The scientists in the control room would simply find themselves staring at dormant monitors, completely unaware that they had just successfully forced the cosmos to flinch. To bypass this, the mission architects had to design a computer capable of surviving the deletion of its own past. The paradox engine is exactly that. Housed within the heavily shielded core of the command satellite is a completely isolated, autonomous quantum processor. But this processor is not tethered to the external environment. It is suspended in a state of perfect quantum isolation, essentially decoupled from the local progression of linear time. It calculates using topological qubits. Unlike standard qubits, which are easily disrupted by the slightest environmental noise, topological qubits rely on the geometric braiding of particle trajectories in two-dimensional space, specifically utilizing quasi-particles known as anyons. Because the information is stored in the braided shape of the particles' paths rather than their specific physical state, the data becomes virtually immune to local environmental decoherence. It is a memory bank constructed out of pure mathematical geometry, heavily fortified against the shifting sands of time. When the active ping emitter fires its catastrophic pulse into the vacuum, the telemetry data, the exact mathematical coordinates of the forced stochastic jump, and the preliminary energetic signatures of the universe's incoming immune response are instantly downloaded into this isolated processor. The processor then artificially seals its quantum state. It becomes a closed loop, an island of immutable data floating outside the jurisdiction of the cosmic timeline. The engineers behind Project Kronos are not just trying to bend the rules of physics, they are deliberately attempting to crash the cosmic operating system. Consider the sheer, staggering magnitude of this logical contradiction. If the universe detects the fracture caused by the ping, it will initiate a retroactive state correction. The timeline will ripple backward. The fabric of reality will buffer, skip a frame, and re-render itself. The firing sequence will be undone. The energy in the capacitor banks will be restored. The researchers on Earth will experience a seamless continuity where the launch button was never pressed. The physical universe will have successfully hidden its repair work, maintaining its flawless facade. But the isolated quantum processor, sealed outside of time, will still hold the data. It will contain the exact telemetry of a ping that never happened. It will hold the mathematical footprint of a timeline that no longer exists. This is not just a measurement error, it is a fundamental paradox. In a universe governed by strict mathematical laws, a paradox is a fatal error. A system cannot simultaneously contain absolute proof of an event and absolute proof that the event never occurred. By forcing the quantum processor to retain the memory of the deleted timeline, Project Kronos is attempting to hold the universe hostage in an unresolvable logical loop. The objective, detailed in the leaked annex, is to observe how the underlying architecture of reality handles a paradox it cannot effortlessly delete. The physicists want to know what happens when the cosmic projector jams. Will the Lattice attempt to reconcile the conflicting data by merging the timelines, creating a localized pocket of space where cause and effect are permanently scrambled? Will it initiate an even more massive stochastic jump, rewriting not just the ping, but the entire evolutionary history of the human species to ensure the paradox engine was never conceived? Or will the localized sector of space simply collapse under the weight of the contradiction, creating a dimensional fracture, a true tear in the canvas of reality that cannot be healed? We are building machines to intentionally infect the universe with a logical virus. We are no longer content with mapping the dark interval or observing the frame rate of the flickering cosmos. We are actively trying to corner the machine that renders our existence, testing the limits of its error-correcting codes. The arrogance required to authorize this mission is beyond human comprehension. It assumes that the computational bandwidth of the universe has a limit, and that we have the processing power to exceed that limit. It assumes we can trap the infinite in a box of our own design. But as the blueprints transition from theoretical physics to military defense protocols, it becomes immediately clear that the architects of this mission are preparing for the worst-case scenario. They understand that when you intentionally inject a paradox into a self-correcting quantum code, the system will eventually stop trying to smoothly fix the error. It will resort to brute force. It will simply delete the sector of the hard drive causing the problem. The universe does not have a conscience. It does not possess morality or mercy. It has algorithms. It has rigid mathematical imperatives designed to maintain structural stability at all costs. And if humanity successfully crashes the localized operating system with an unresolvable paradox, the resulting immune response will not be a subtle rewrite of our history. It will be an eradication. We are staring down the barrel of a weapon we built, pointed directly at the mirror of reality, waiting to see who pulls the trigger first. When a biological organism detects a hostile virus, it does not negotiate. It mounts an immediate, overwhelming immune response designed to isolate and eradicate the foreign threat before the infection can spread. The human body uses white blood cells. A computer operating system uses antivirus quarantines. But what happens when the universe itself detects a paradox? What is the immune response of the cosmic lattice? To understand the magnitude of the threat Project Kronos is inviting, we must shift our focus from human engineering back to cosmic mechanics. For 13.8 billion years, the quantum architecture of the universe has functioned as a perfectly balanced, self-correcting mathematical code. It maintains geometric stability by executing retroactive state corrections whenever localized energy anomalies threaten its structure. It edits its own past to heal itself. But, as we discussed, the paradox engine aboard the Kronos array is designed to survive that edit. It is designed to retain the mathematical footprint of a deleted timeline. It is engineered to be an unresolvable logical error. In the realm of quantum computing, an unresolvable error is fatal. If a classical computer encounters a paradox, a piece of code that contradicts its own underlying logic, the program crashes. It freezes. But the universe cannot freeze. Time must move forward, and the frames of reality must continue to render. Therefore, physicists have theorized a much darker, far more aggressive contingency protocol built into the fabric of space-time. They call it localized timeline deletion. The greatest existential threat to Earth is no longer a stray asteroid or a dying star. It is the mathematical certainty of a localized cosmic deletion. If the active ping emitter fires, and the paradox engine successfully forces the cosmos into a logical contradiction, the universe will not simply tolerate the glitch, it will recognize the orbital array, and by extension the entire sector of space surrounding it, as a corrupted sector of the quantum hard drive. In order to preserve the structural integrity of the macro structure, the universe will have to quarantine the anomaly. It will execute a localized excision. This is not a physical destruction like a supernova or a black hole tearing a solar system apart. This is a geometric erasure. The universe would initiate a massive, targeted stochastic jump that does not just edit the events of our local timeline, but fundamentally alters the baseline parameters of our spatial coordinates. It would rewrite the local laws of physics so that the Kronos array, the Earth, and our entire solar system could not mathematically exist within that space. We would not be destroyed in a ball of fire. We would simply be written out of the cosmic equation. The frame would render and we would not be in it. This process of localized deletion is a direct mathematical consequence of treating the universe as a hyperdimensional quantum computer. When a sector of memory is irreparably corrupted, the system performs a hard format. It wipes the sector clean and replaces it with empty, stable data. For the universe, empty, stable data is just the silent, uniform vacuum of deep space. If humanity triggers the cosmic immune response, our sun, our planets, and every trace of our civilization will be instantaneously replaced by a few cubic parsecs of cold, unyielding void. The cosmic static will resume its quiet hum, completely undisturbed by the brief, arrogant glitch that used to be the human race. When you consider the sheer scale of quantum entanglement, localized deletion becomes infinitely more complex. Every particle in our solar system has interacted with photons from distant stars. Our gravity tugs however infinitesimally, on neighboring star systems. We are woven into the broader tapestry of the Milky Way. To delete Earth without unraveling the rest of the galaxy, the cosmic immune response would have to execute a surgical extraction. The quantum lattice would have to sever the entanglements, binding our local sector to the surrounding universe. It would have to construct a mathematical firewall around the paradox. This firewall would manifest as an absolute dimensional boundary, an event horizon not created by the gravitational collapse of a star, but by the collapse of logical consistency. From the outside, observers in other star systems would see our solar system suddenly wink out of existence, replaced by a sphere of absolute, impenetrable blackness where light and gravity no longer propagate. From the inside, humanity would experience the instantaneous dissolution of spatial dimensions. The distances between atoms would become mathematically undefined. The structural integrity of matter would evaporate because the rules governing the strong and weak nuclear forces would simply cease to compile within the local lattice. We would experience the ultimate unmaking. The defense departments overseeing Project Kronos have quietly directed resources toward analyzing the cosmic microwave background, not for signs of the Big Bang, but for the thermodynamic scars of previous deletions. They are looking for spherical anomalies in the deep field data, perfectly empty voids that defy natural astrophysical formation. They are searching for the graveyards of other civilizations, ancient alien species that might have discovered the flickering universe, built their own active ping emitters, and subsequently triggered the cosmic immune response. The terrifying silence of the universe, the famous Fermi paradox, might not be because life is rare. It might be because any civilization that advances enough to touch the quantum lattice is immediately and permanently quarantined by the operating system of reality. What makes this scenario truly terrifying is the non-local nature of the immune response. Because the cosmic lattice communicates with itself instantaneously outside the boundaries of the speed of light, the strikeback would not travel toward us. It would not appear in our telescopes as an approaching wave of destruction. There would be no warning sirens, no evacuation protocols, and no final moments of realization. The deletion would occur simultaneously across the entire affected sector. 1 millisecond humanity would be waiting for the telemetry data from the orbital array, and the next millisecond, the timeline would resolve into a reality where our local galactic arm had always been barren. The theoretical physicists advising the military complex have run millions of simulations trying to predict the exact threshold of this immune response. They are desperately trying to calculate the maximum amount of paradox the universe can tolerate before it decides to amputate the solar system. Some models suggest the universe is highly resilient, capable of absorbing microscopic logical errors by creating isolated, localized pockets of tangled spacetime. But other, more pessimistic models argue that the universe has zero tolerance for artificial retrocausality. They argue that the moment the Bose-Einstein condensate locks onto the dark interval and the active ping emitter fires its first pulse, the deletion protocol will instantly activate. We are entirely blind to the security architecture of the cosmos. We are attempting to pick the lock on the vault of reality using a high explosive charge, with no understanding of what kind of alarm systems are wired into the door. The scientists pushing for the launch of Project Kronos argue that the risk is justified by the potential reward. They believe that if we can force the paradox and survive, we will gain access to the root directory of physics. We will elevate humanity from a biological accident to a cosmic administrator. But the classified military annexes attached to the blueprints reveal a deep institutional paranoia. The generals and defense secretaries funding this initiative do not share the scientists' optimism. They view the universe not as a laboratory, but as a hostile, overwhelmingly superior foreign power. And you do not launch an unprovoked attack on a superior power without having a defense protocol in place. They know the immune response is coming. and they have drafted a desperate, highly classified contingency plan to fight back against the erasure of reality itself. You do not build a machine that can trigger the wrath of the cosmos without a defense protocol. The military strategists funding Project Kronos are not reckless scientists driven purely by the pursuit of knowledge, they are architects of war. When the theoretical physicists presented the mathematical certainty of a localized timeline deletion, the immediate response from the defense sector was not to cancel the mission. The response was to weaponize the orbital array even further. If the universe possesses an immune system designed to eradicate paradoxes, then humanity must build a countermeasure. We must build a vaccine against the erasure of reality. Governments have spent decades building nuclear deterrents for terrestrial wars. The new blueprints reveal a deterrent designed to wage war against the underlying lattice of reality itself. Buried in the most heavily encrypted sections of the leaked data is a contingency protocol codenamed Operation Dead Hand. It is a terrifying homage to the Cold War automated nuclear retaliation systems, but scaled up to a cosmological level. The premise of Operation Dead Hand is brutally simple. If the active ping emitter successfully fractures the vacuum, and if the paradox engine traps the universe in a logical contradiction, the orbital array will not simply wait to be deleted, it will actively fight back against the incoming retrocausal wave. To understand how a machine can fight the fabric of space-time, we must look at the mechanics of wave interference. In classical physics, if you have a wave of water moving toward you, you can cancel it out by generating an identical wave moving in the opposite direction, perfectly out of phase. The crest of one wave meets the trough of the other, and the water becomes perfectly flat. This is destructive interference. The physicists behind Operation Dead Hand propose applying this exact principle to the quantum lattice. A localized timeline deletion is, mathematically speaking, a massive geometric wave of state correction propagating backward from the future. The Kronos satellites are equipped with autonomous threat detection algorithms running on their isolated quantum processors. If these sensors detect the preliminary energetic signature of a cosmic immune response, a sudden impossible drop in local entropy signaling that our sector of space is about to be mathematically formatted, Operation Dead Hand automatically engages. Human commanders will not have time to authorize the strike. The timeline would rewrite itself before a human brain could even process the warning alarm. The defense protocol is entirely in the hands of the machines. Upon detecting the incoming deletion, the satellite constellation will immediately dump the entirety of its fusion reactor reserves into the phased array projectors, but they will not fire a concentrated pulse to break the vacuum. Instead, they will calculate the exact mathematical inverse of the incoming retrocausal wave and fire a synchronized, continuous counterping. They will attempt to generate a localized field of destructive quantum interference. The goal is not to destroy the universe. The goal is to create a quantum shield around the orbital perimeter of Earth. By actively jamming the baseline frequency of the dark interval, the Kronos array aims to make our local sector of space mathematically opaque to the rest of the cosmos. When the universe attempts to render the next frame and erase our existence, the counterping will theoretically scramble the localized geometry, forcing the cosmic operating system to encounter a wall of pure decoherence. The universe will try to delete us, and the orbital array will simply refuse to compile the command. This is the grim, sobering reality of military strategists treating the laws of physics as a hostile foreign power. They are preparing to deploy electronic warfare tactics against the architecture of existence. But the engineers who drafted the Dead Hand protocol have outlined the catastrophic consequences of actually surviving this cosmic siege. If the quantum shield holds, if we successfully repel a timeline deletion, we will not simply go back to our normal lives. We will have essentially severed our local solar system from the macro structure of the universe. By maintaining a continuous field of destructive quantum interference, we would be isolating Earth from the non-local entangled network of the cosmic lattice. We would become a severed timeline, a rogue geometric island floating outside the jurisdiction of the cosmic operating system. The physical ramifications of this isolation are entirely unknown and deeply terrifying. Because gravity is dictated by the smooth geometry of the surrounding lattice, severing our connection might instantly alter the gravitational constant within our solar system. The orbits of the planets could destabilize. The Sun could experience catastrophic fluctuations in its fusion core as the underlying vacuum energy of our local space is artificially held in a state of continuous, violent decoherence. Furthermore, the night sky would change permanently. If our local space is mathematically opaque, light from the rest of the universe might no longer be able to penetrate the quantum shield. The billions of galaxies, the shimmering band of the Milky Way, and the distant quasars would vanish. We would look up into a sky of absolute, suffocating blackness, lit only by our own sun and the neighboring planets trapped inside the bubble with us. We would be alive, but we would be entirely alone, permanently exiled from the rest of reality. The architects of Project Kronos consider a starless, isolated sky an acceptable price to pay for the survival of the human timeline. They would rather rule over a severed, rogue pocket of space than allow humanity to be quietly formatted into the empty void. The sheer scale of this hubris is staggering. We are a species that has only recently learned how to leave our own atmosphere, and yet we are actively preparing to barricade the door against the infinite. The leaked blueprints confirm that the hardware for Operation Dead Hand is already integrated into the satellites. The fusion reactors are calibrated. The topological qubits in the paradox engine are primed. The military has assumed total control over the launch sequence, overriding any objections from the theoretical physicists who fear they have built a doomsday device. The transition from passive astronomy to active cosmological warfare is no longer a theoretical debate. It is a scheduled event. As the final launch preparations proceed under extreme global secrecy, the astrophysics community is left to grapple with the horrifying reality of what is about to happen. We are not just poking a sleeping giant. We are loading a gun, aiming it at the giant, and daring it to wake up. The blueprints are finalized. The hardware is fueled. The first ping is already scheduled. We are no longer dealing with the theoretical mathematics of a whiteboard. We are dealing with titanium, liquid helium, and topological qubits sitting on a launch pad, waiting for the countdown. The governments of Earth have made their decision. They have looked at the terrifying architecture of the flickering universe. They have calculated the absolute certainty of a localized timeline deletion, and they have chosen to pull the trigger first. Project Kronos is no longer an observation mission. It is a preemptive strike on the cosmic operating system. To understand the psychological weight of this moment, we must realize that the launch of this orbital array represents the final days of human certainty. For our entire existence, we have taken comfort in the permanence of our past. We believe that our history, our evolution, and the very ground we walk on were immutable facts, carved into the continuous fabric of space-time. But as the countdown clocks tick closer to zero, that comfort is evaporating. The physicists and military strategists overseeing the launch know that once the active emitter fires, the absolute certainty of our past and future is gone forever. We are about to enter the era of the quantum mosaic, a reality where history is fluid, and the foundational geometry of space is subject to retroactive state corrections. The moment the Bose-Einstein condensates lock onto the dark interval, we cease to be passive observers. We become active participants in the rendering of reality. And if Operation Dead Hand engages, if we successfully deploy a quantum shield of destructive interference to block the universe's immune response, we will fundamentally sever ourselves from the natural cosmos. We will become a rogue timeline, a localized paradox wrapped in a mathematically opaque bubble surviving against the will of the universe. This is the ultimate evolutionary threshold. We are transitioning from a biological species confined to a single planet into a retrocausal entity capable of negotiating with the underlying code of existence. But the cost of this evolution is total isolation. If the quantum shield holds, the night sky as we know it will be extinguished. The billions of galaxies will vanish behind a wall of pure decoherence. We will trade the infinite beauty of a continuous universe for the terrifying control of a severed, discrete reality. The men and women sitting in the classified control rooms are carrying a burden that no human being has ever had to bear. They have their fingers on a button that will either elevate humanity to the status of cosmic architects or instantly format our entire solar system into cold, empty void. There is no middle ground. The equations do not allow for a partial failure. The paradox engine will force the contradiction, the universe will respond, and the resulting shock wave will rewrite the parameters of our existence in a fraction of a Planck time. The moment that emitter fires, humanity will either become the architects of a new quantum reality, or we will have never existed at all. As we prepare to cross this threshold, we must ask ourselves what it means to be human in a universe that we can actively edit. If we survive the cosmic immune response, if we learn how to master the stochastic jumps and rewrite our own spatial geometry, we will no longer be bound by the laws of classical physics. We will conquer the speed of light, we will harvest the infinite energy of the dark interval, and we will rewrite the destiny of our species. We will step between the frames of reality, navigating the cosmic static like gods in a machine. But we must also remember that the universe is ancient, and its error-correcting codes are infinitely complex. We are assuming that we can outsmart a system that has maintained the structural integrity of 100 billion galaxies for 13 billion years. We are betting the entire history of Earth on the processing power of a few topological qubits. The countdown to the first paradox has started. The classical universe is taking its final breath. We are about to wake up the giant, and there is no turning back.